there's a lot of great drugs that are available, but if it costs $2 to $3 million for the patient to get a CAR T treatment or a cancer treatment, you didn't actually make anything any better, right? And I think that's been the fundamental issue of it's great to have great drugs and breakthrough treatments, but if it's not affordable and democratizable, then we didn't really improve anything.
Hey everyone, this is Prashant, and today we have Maximilian Winter and Krish Ramadurai from Harmonix Fund with us. Harmonix invests in technological breakthroughs that will help create a future for a healthy, operational, and peaceful civilization. The fund focuses on exceptional entrepreneurs and innovative healthcare, life sciences, and deep tech startups. In this episode, we talk about backing scientific innovations, the secret behind the success of their fund with their portfolio crossing $7 billion, how they source high quality deals, the role of scientific research, some breakthrough innovations that they have backed, their portfolio construction strategy, and so much more. So without wasting any time, let's dive straight in. Hey, Maximilian and Chris, so good to have you on the VC10X podcast. How are you doing?
Great, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure having you on. I'm excited to learn about all things that you're doing at Harmonix. So can we first have the story behind Harmonix and what's the vision and mission there?
Sure, yeah. So we were founded to accelerate the mission of ushering in a new paradigm of scientific discovery. And Harmonix is committed to investing in companies offering functional evidence-based solutions to today's critical real-world challenges. At the intersection of healthcare, life sciences, infrastructure, and deep tech, our partnerships built on principles and integrity, excellence, and impact are about more than capital. They are a pledge to reshape industries and craft a healthier, brighter future for the world.
That sounds amazing. Awesome. And from what I learned after doing my research, that it's been a really successful fund. I think your portfolio across two funds is valued over $7 billion, and you have multiple acquisitions and one IPO in that. So what's been the secret behind the success of the fund, and how do you pick companies? How do you pick your investments? What do you look for in companies?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the fund, we luckily have our sixth exit hopefully coming around the corner. But for us, we identified this new breed of compute-enabled platform company that's able to compress that research and development timeline it takes to bring a product or service to market faster. And as you know, in biotech and deep tech, it could take 10 to 20 years to bring an asset through clinic or a minimally viable product to market. And for us, we found that next-gen compute, AI, ML, deep neural networks, all the acronyms, are basically compressing this design, test, build, learn cycle. And what we're able to do is accelerate these breakthroughs in what used to take decades in only a handful of years. And the very cool thing is that not only are you able to accelerate the development of that asset or product or service, which is great, but we can actually achieve a sustainable business model quicker. So a lot of our companies are revenue generating, which is really great. So we get, the cornerstone element of our fund, which is generating alpha, but most importantly, accelerating these critical breakthroughs to market much faster that humanity needs. So for us, we've been keen to do that across healthcare, life sciences, and deep tech. And it's been a cool area to be in just because it's a relatively nascent area. As you know, next-gen compute has just been around for the last, handful of years that's actually been able to be tangible. But most importantly, for us, we like to have proven outcomes. So we like to actually see, okay, it's great that we can accelerate the research and development aspect of this, but is this a painkiller and not a vitamin, what we like to say, for customers, consumers, and the general public abroad? So that's kind of been our secret sauce. And, when we're looking at the startups, we're looking, for a blend of emotional intelligence on the founding team. I like to say we like the beer test. If I can't sit down and have a drink with you, how are we going to be friends for 10 years? And then the other element is we take an evidence-based approach to the investments. So we're looking at under the hood at the hardcore science and engineering elements to identify, does the data support the claim, and is the literature out there supporting of it? So it's really important that we identify what we call that strike zone of, we do have functional proof of concept on the technology. We do have data that supports the claim that the entrepreneur is making. And most importantly, it's right for that growth curve that we can come in and plug in and help operationally support the company to become successful.
So when you said that you want to back founders that are resilient and, of course, have the skills and experience required to build that, and also they're also fun to hang with. So I think the industries that you're going after are very deep tech and very scientific. So are these founders always that interesting when you meet them? Are they always fun to hang with? Because it doesn't necessarily need to align with uh, a good founder is always fun to hang with, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of our founders are technical founders, which is great. And I think the biggest thing is that they have to be able to tell a good story, but also maintain the fundamentals of science, applied science and engineering principles. So a lot of them, yeah, there's a lot of trials and tribulations in entrepreneurship, and it's constantly evolving. I think with three full market swings in 3 separate years and a bank collapse, entrepreneurs have been through pretty much every type of permutation of an outcome on the market side. But I think the biggest thing is just endogenous passion for what they're doing. And there's a lot of ups and downs in entrepreneurship, and the best founders are, as you mentioned, are resilient. But most importantly, identify the line of sight to value inflection points and key performance indicators. They're the ones that don't do the fake it till you make it. They do more of the how are we going to get to the next set of milestones in a tangible manner, going from 0 to 1. And I think that's been a key element of a lot of the founders of they react to adversity really well in a constructive fashion, but most importantly, have definable outcomes that they can actually achieve and hit. Because it's great that everybody wants to become a unicorn, but there's a whole host of points you have to be able to hit in between. And it's great from an investor perspective to have that, what we call line of sight to realization, even when there's volatility on the macro level or other elements. And a lot of times, science engineering, there's a lot of unknowns, right? The beauty of science is you don't really know how biology reacts, and you're constantly testing hypotheses, and your ability to adapt and react to those outcomes is super important, and maintain the passion for the work. Because the investors were here to be cheerleaders, and we go into the game for 1 or 2 plays, then we go back, and then we go back in. So I think the best founders understand that dynamic of we're providing the guide rails for the science, technology, and engineering, but also make sure that they have operational nexus of control, um, and understand how to achieve those milestones. So
Absolutely, totally agree. And how do you find these people? How do you source these high quality deals and these high quality founders?
yeah, so we've got 3 buckets. So we have over 40 awesome founders in our portfolio right now. So we get a lot of really awesome internal founder referrals. I think the quality of any good investor is always your own founders giving you access to other great founders and their networks. So that's kind of the first bucket. The second bucket is our co-investor syndicate network. So we've co-invested with over 300 of the top VC PE funds, both domestically and abroad. So we have a really awesome network of these high caliber co-investors that we typically syndicate with when we're coming into investment rounds. As you know, in venture, it's kind of like the Breakfast Club. There's certain firms that like to hang out with each other and do deals together. And the space that we're in of deep tech meeting health and bio, it's a very, very nascent space with only a handful of firms operating in it. So it's actually really important that the co-investor syndicate is robust and diversified, because each one of the investors has their own kind of superpower in helping that company succeed, whether it's on the technical side, the business development side, the hiring, et cetera, which is really important. And then the last bucket is the federal governmental agencies and academic syndicate partner network. So we have over 150 academic PIs or principal investigators and laboratories, both domestically and abroad, that we've identified and work with. And then also over 15 federal and governmental agencies across all 6 branches of the Department of Defense, DARPA, IARPA, et cetera. So between the federal and academic agencies, getting and then our co-investor syndicate and then internal founder referrals, that's brought us to over 6,000 deals that we've seen over the last 4 years, and a really nice kind of heterogeneous, robust, diverse deal flow. And because as you know, you never know when the next cool deal is around the corner, so it's always great to have
Yeah,
kind of a nice plug-in across the board.
absolutely. I love it how you built a complete structure around it, that it's coming to you from the right sources and it's almost vetted whenever it comes to you. If it's already portfolio founder, it's almost vetted that if they're referring someone, it's going to be at least to a certain level, and then you can do your diligence. Um, And how much of a scientific play is there in the companies that you're backing? I think since you're investing early stage, I believe at that point the product will not yet be out in the market most of the times. It's still in the research phases. So how do you get that insight into how's that research going, and what will be the outcome of that research, and how valuable will that outcome be uh, in the business world maybe?
Yeah, that's a great question. We typically we invest, right around proof of concept of the technology. Generally, what we're looking for is just at least one or two white papers that validate externally that yes, this approach or tech or whatever actually does have a functional fundamental basis for existence. And then it's kind of our job to find the applicability of that core platform technology in a market space that would be best conducive for it and its success. And I think for us, a lot of the technologies we invest, in critical technologies. And I think this is important. We have a saying like 90% of VC investments, if you got rid of them, the world would be the same. So we like to be in that 10% of technologies that you have a moral obligation to realize because it's so important that you got to dedicate the time and resources to do. So and a lot of our founders have that big loon shot vision of they want to go to Pluto, but we're always like, let's go to the moon first, then Mars, and then we can worry about everything else. So they have that big vision. We've had over 15 major scientific breakthroughs in our portfolio, everything from the world's first fully end-to-end AI-designed drug in clinical trials to the launch of the first commercial rideshare satellite into space. And a lot of fundamental basis of those companies were those big ideas and vision, but they had the technical insight and execution playbook to actually get to realizing that vision in a model that was actually conducive to being venture backable. And so a lot of these breakthroughs we had, some of them were in later stage opportunities because we do up to Series B investment. And then some of them came out even earlier at the earliest stage. But as you mentioned, a lot of the ideas, we might be investing when the idea is on the back of a napkin to when the company is kind of ready to go public. But our sweet spot has always been fundamental proof of concept of the core tech, and then we can help them actually get to that breakthrough market area that they should be in. And a lot of diligence goes into play. It's typically, for an investment, we'll do about 100 to 150 hours of due diligence on the company. And it gets put in this giant science report that hopefully people read. And then at the end of the day, what we're looking for is we have a proprietary assessment framework of everything from the founder's favorite color and what they like to do for fun to intellectual property procurement, the science and engineering, the literature supporting all that fun stuff. So we like to have a comprehensive, well-rounded framework. I think a lot of firms, I think it's always good to have a very robust diligence process so that we can track the companies even after post-investment to see how are they working on hitting their milestones, et cetera. But most importantly, like we mentioned, the technologies that they're working on, we want to have that kind of guideline framework because they're so critical and important that either way we have to figure out a way how to get them to market or how to realize it because a lot of them are fundamental breakthroughs in the fields that they're in. So.
Absolutely, and that's very much in alignment with the mission Maximilian mentioned initially, of why Harmonix was actually started. The mission of actually advancing society. It can be technological, and the sector focus also reflects that all the sectors are very impactful sectors that you're investing in. So, can you share some of the breakthrough innovations that have come through your existing portfolio, and also some that are still in the works but can have very exciting breakthroughs in themselves?
On a high level, we've had the first fully AI generated drug to enter clinical trials. The first rideshare satellite, which can take multiple payloads on the same satellite bus and really reduce the time to launch from multiple years to months. And the first platform that can manufacture any human cell type in your body. And many other breakthroughs. Maybe Krish, if you can think of some others.
Yeah, so we've had those. We had one company that was able to 3D print the first vascularized perfusible human tissue out of your body. So you could actually literally print a functioning body part outside of your body that you can put blood through, which is really important. And then we've had on the AI ML side, one of our companies developed the first algorithm that beat the Turing test, which actually showed that you had higher order cognitive ability of that algorithm and stuff like that. So we got the super nerdy stuff, that's more of a technical fundamental breakthrough. And then we got the big, bold, super visionary, kind of like cover of a magazine stuff, and everything in between. And I think the most important thing is that it's kind of like doing the stuff in the movies, except in real life. But most importantly, that as we mentioned, the data always supports the claim, and that these ideas, they sounded kind of crazy on paper, but we were able to kind of connect the dots to get the realization fundamentally. And I think that's probably the most important thing, of as opposed to just writing a check into a company, crossing your fingers that maybe they'll do it, but you don't know. So being evidence based was really important behind making these decisions. So
Yeah, and whenever we can, we try to not just find a moonshot, but really a company that has a near-term revenue generation model that then can be built out into the ultimate breakthrough, right? And with a 3D bioprinting company that was vascularized tissue models that can be used for drug testing that are closer than animal testing. And the ultimate thing is to print human organs that are functional and won't get rejected by the patient's immune system.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you balance the two? I think the fund is actually very exciting. The focus is very exciting. That you want to back futuristic stuff, and a lot of futuristic stuff like maybe interplanetary stuff or stuff like that. That takes a long time to build, honestly. Then how do you balance the revenue generating aspect? Do you push your companies that also in the near term go for something that can generate revenue for you, go for some sort of sustainability, and also in the long term go for your moonshot goals as well? How do you balance that?
yeah, I mean, my perspective has always been build something that people want, and I think that's really important. Probably one of the major issues with entrepreneurs is that not, you can have a great idea, but if like not all great ideas are meant to be venture backable, and I think that's really important. That you got to really have a painkiller solution for the industry of the customers at play. And a lot of entrepreneurs come up with an idea and then they struggle to find somebody to actually validate that that idea is a problem in the industry, and that they're most importantly willing to pay for that. And I think that's probably one of the biggest issues. And a lot of our companies, the breakthroughs that they have, the breakthroughs are actually highly relevant to that industry, their customers, because it's better, faster, cheaper. So as we mentioned with the company that developed the first ever AI, designed drug in clinical trials, they were able to do that in less than 2 years for less than a couple $1 million, from going from a drug target to human trials, right? And that would typically take a company tens of millions of dollars and a lot longer to do it. So it showed that better, faster, cheaper element. That company that launched the first commercial rideshare satellite in orbit, same thing. They're able to put 10 customer payloads instead of one on a satellite bus. So you can actually save a lot of money and a lot of time. And that's kind of the reinforcing element of a lot of these companies, is that they're saving their customers a lot of time. They're making, since they're full stack compute companies, they're able to actually consolidate that industry and the amount of separate players that you have to have at each point of that interface. And instead, they can be the one-stop shop for it. And I think that's really important because customers have to be endogenously excited if you really want to get aggressive scale, right? A lot of times entrepreneurs are pushing their ideas on the customer and trying to convince them why this is better. But if the customer can see, wow, we're going to save time and money on this, then it's kind of a no-brainer, which is pretty awesome, right? And that's kind of where you hit that sweet spot then of, okay, we have this cool breakthrough tech, which the customer is like, okay, that's great, but like in the meantime, what does this mean for me? Do I have to wait a decade for this? And then a lot of the companies are able to fill that gap in the meantime of being able to provide that product or service in the now, and then ultimately scale to that big breakthrough vision.
Absolutely. And I would love to learn how many of your investments actually involve patents and IP, and how does that impact the investment decision? Do you have a patent for this? Depending on what stage they are at in the research. Give us an insight into that.
There's been 300 patents granted across the portfolio, probably way more than that now. I think in biotech, patents are really important. In deep tech, as you know, that's kind of foundational elements to it. On the AI ML side, as you might know, it's very difficult to get patents, but we've actually found a way. Quite a few of the companies have actually been able to get fundamental intellectual property on the algorithms and the infrastructure that they're building out. I think, probably the most important thing is it's great to have a patentable idea, but a lot of the companies are first in the space with the tech. And I think that's important where they can do the land grab on the IP, which is great. But most importantly, a lot of times they're only either the only operating entity in that space that has an extreme competitive advantage on the tech stack, or if they're part of a group of firms that are operating in that firm, they're actually operating in a distinct market segment that is differentiated from the other firms that are currently operating in it. So it is a blend because, as you mentioned, a lot of the early stage stuff, if you have an idea on the back of a napkin, right, you probably don't have a patent yet or you're working on one. So I think probably the most important thing for the academic spinout companies is getting the intellectual property in a timeline that's conducive to the investors. So as you know, some universities might take years to grant IP if you're spinning out a company, and that could be a detriment to that company in the meantime because you're crossing your fingers that hopefully that will go through so that you can actually totally cut the cord from that institution and move on. So that's probably the biggest hindrance that we've seen on the IP procurement of some universities are very easy plug and play. They'll give you the patent and or the IP and with all the corresponding um, payment structures and fee structures associated with it, licensing, etc. But others are a lot more intense and require a lot more time and effort. So, which is ironic because that could be detrimental to the success of that company at the same time. So it is a balance for sure between the tangible elements of a lot of the companies, especially in the compute tech. There's not a lot of tangibles in it, and I think that's important that at the end of the day, for the intangible products like software or whatever, having a tangible asset attached to it, such as a patent or an FTO or whatever, etc., is important because then that sets precedent for the space that likely your competitors won't have. So,
In addition to the IP, there's often trade secrets or proprietary data as well.
Right, right, absolutely. Uh, and since I've learned that you have an amazing portfolio that's performing well in the first two funds, so and you've had multiple exits as well, 6 exits is what you said, I think. So from those exits, what you have learned that in what fashion were those companies built, and now to your existing portfolio, what are your learnings from those exits that you would like to convey to your existing portfolio as well, that this is how they did it and this is a good way you can also this is an approach that you can take as well, right? So any observation that were maybe common through those exits, those success stories?
Sure. Well, a few of the a few of the exits have been acquisitions that were inbound. So the technology was sent out to the customers, and the customer said, "When can we see it?" And came as soon as possible, and just said, "We just have to have this," without any intention of getting acquired that soon. Um, so I think it's been a little bit unexpected. Actually, some of these investments were companies that were at the seed stage, and we thought that we were going to have it in the portfolio for 10 years, right? Because it's things like the 3D bioprinting and really ambitious missions like trying to print organs. And so I think that just doing something that is so needed, right? When you have a translational efficacy gap from mouse to human of 90%, then like that's probably a major reason why drugs end up costing $2 or $3 billion, right? So if you could have drug testing models that are closer to humans and maybe only fail half the time or less, then I think customers just have to have that because they can fundamentally change the economics and also hopefully democratize that treatments. Others, in other spaces, there's one that just filed for an IPO. They They designed the first end-to-end fully designed drug in clinical trials. They have over 30 programs, which usually looks more like a big biopharma company rather than a small biotech. And they've had successes in out-licensing some of their computationally generated drugs and drug discovery um, to publicly listed biotech companies, and have had a huge success in terms of generating revenue, but also with their internal drug development that could still lead to multi-billion-dollar outcomes. So I think in every case, it's been something where it's critical technology that was needed in the industry to solve a bottleneck, and the customers knew that from the beginning and just had to have it.
Yeah, absolutely. And since your portfolio is very diversified across different sectors, although all very important sectors, impactful sectors, so how are you supporting your portfolio companies in helping them succeed? And what is something that the portfolio companies need the help with the most, and how do you support that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, every firm always says that they add value add in different ways. And I think it's important to have tangible outcomes associated with the value adds that you provide. So for us, it's typically on founders always need help with the same three things. It's the hiring, business development, and capital raise. Even when you become a unicorn, it's still the same things that they need help with. And so for us, typically we're plugging in on doing everything from the market modeling to the customer segmentation analysis to the actual product development and launch. So building out back-end architectures, trying to identify, on the customer segmentation model, what is the actual fundamental problem that these customers are having? How do we address it? How do we work on scaling the BD side to actually compress the time it takes to, bring a contract in and close it? Because as you know, in life sciences and healthcare, it could take up to 18 months to get a partnership or a contract going. It's a very slow, long, arduous process. The other element is, clinical and regulatory advising. So, since we do platforms, one of the hardest things to do is figure out what are we going to actually do for the first play with the platform, because we can do 100 million things, and getting the founders focused on, okay, what is the beachhead element, and especially in biopharma, because that lead asset that you pick is going to define fundamentally the first couple rounds of financing. And if you pick a bad asset that's in an indication that the market doesn't receive very well, it'll be really hard. But if you pick something that is very hot, like oncology or whatever, then it's a different story. So basically what we'll do is what I call Christmas lists, clinical indication selection, of researching each of the beachhead indication modalities and then matching the science of, okay, this is our approach on the platform. This is the fundamental science. How does this translate into a viable asset play that it actually can make this company really well? So a lot of work is kind of spent on basically going through that Christmas list and narrowing it down to a handful of asset leads that they can viably go for. And then probably the other thing is emotional support. So besides doing all the BD, customer intros, all that fun stuff that anybody can do, I think being able to be available for the founders, without them feeling like it's weird, right? We're investors at the end of the day, but we're also people. And, you have to have a nice kind of, you got to break down those barriers with founders, because transparency is really important, right? It's good for us to know, we don't have TMI, we don't have too much information from the founder side, but like at the same time, it's good for us to know, okay, what are some roadblocks that are being, that were happening right now, and that the founder actually feels comfortable relaying those. Because sometimes with investors, if you have negative things, and there's a lot of fires in science and engineering all the time, but some investors aren't very receptive to that, right? They'll see, oh, it's a problem. Is the company going down? Should I pull my money out? Like, or what's going to happen thing? I think the best investors that have weathered the storm are the ones that say, okay, we've seen this a bunch of times because we've had a bunch of other companies have the same problem. This is our battle plan here, and being able to have them to text and call. Honestly, it's probably the most important intangible thing, because not, being a good investor is also a 1-in-1 ratio with being a good person. And I think if, founders can be comfortable with that, we solved a lot of big problems just off of that transparency index. And ironically, it was actually good. The founder would always be like, was this a bad idea to tell you this? Actually, a lot of times it was good because we were able to come up with a constructive solution in a way that benefited everybody. And then anything, it gave us more operational insight as to, okay, and the next set of investments we make, what are some model or bottlenecks we have to be aware of? Because as you know, in this game, we're investing in a jockey while we're waiting for them to build the horse. And then we got to put the horse in the race inevitably. So it's a lot of the intangible elements on the operating side of identifying, okay, what are the best jockeys, and what's the cadence of communication between the investors and the founder, as to how to mitigate these problems and create a good operating business. So.
Absolutely. I love that. And I would love an insight into your portfolio construction strategy, because you've had certain wins in the portfolio. Where any of those, did you had follow-on rounds in those, and maybe if you have any ownership targets, and diversification aspect, what components do you look for in a portfolio? Any reserve for follow-on rounds? So what's the strategy there?
Yeah. So we have the three buckets of healthcare, life sciences, which account for 80%, and then critical infrastructure, deep tech, which accounts for roughly 20%. So I think that in itself is a great diversification, because we're able to go to, where are the market trends, where are companies being financed until they hit their critical milestones, and then also span a little bit from like super early stage, something that was just spun out of university to something that's already generating $1 million or a few million in revenue. So from that perspective, also very diversified. Then we invest primarily in the US, but also global. And so, one of our biggest winners has been a global company based out of Hong Kong, or headquartered out of Hong Kong with global offices. And I think, diversifying the talent, especially with computational approaches, that's a bit more inexpensive and affordable overseas, has been great. And then follow-on rounds, as you know, in the early funds that are very small are a bit tough. We've done some follow-ons. I think some of the companies that have exited to date, we have not done any follow-ons in those, if I remember correctly. But we have done some follow-ons, and hopefully over the next 2 or 3 years, there'll be some more positive outcomes that'll reward our decision to double down in those. And then follow-on rounds. Now in this third fund, we plan to do follow-on rounds with about 40%. Previously, it was much lower than that, and both of those funds are fully deployed now. Krish, if there's anything you wanted to add, feel free.
Yeah, I guess the final thing would be, since we do seed the Series B, what's kind of nice is that, we're able to get the accelerated liquidity horizon of the later stage companies while we're waiting for the babies to grow up, basically. So I think it's something that we've tried to break the mold on traditional venture, where everybody thinks, oh, okay, my money's going to be locked up for 10 to 12 years. Cross my fingers that something goes liquid. What we've been able to do is kind of accelerate the flywheel and be able to provide near-term liquidity in a way that still achieves that alpha generation of early stage growth. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. It's something that's a delicate balance in an art form, but if you're able to pull it off, it's nice because you can give our investors liquidity so they don't have to freak out, and then also still have that alpha capture of the seed and A stuff early on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very interesting strategy. So, is there certain kind of allocation you've given to early stage and late stage investments that you'll do? Any percentage allocation there, uh, and also any insight into the companies that you've exited? Were they later stage or were they earlier stage? Yeah.
The earlier stage companies on the seed level is usually 500K to $1 million check, and then the Series A can be 1 to 3 million, and then the later stage Series B tends to be 2.5 to 5 million. Yeah, so a little
Yeah.
less on the
Right.
earlier stage ones usually, until we know that they really have a lot of proof points with revenue and so on. or the science is just so strong and other
Yeah.
aspects are convincing and overwhelming.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to ask is, do you have a certain, because the fund is a certain size, let's say 50 million fund, right? So, and if you go more of later stage, then the fund will get exhausted very quickly, right? So do you have certain kind of allocation that this part of the fund is going to go to early stage, this part is going to go to later stage? Any kind of segregation there?
Yep. It's generally 20, 25 positions per fund. And then, what we actually ended up doing on this third fund is we split the Series B into an opportunity fund and then just did the primary fund focused on seed and A. But in the prior funds, it was generally, we were shooting for 10 seed, 10 A's, and 3 to 5 B's. Generally, because as you know, we're shooting for 5 to 10% equity ownership, and in the growth stage rounds, our checks are kind of a drop of water in an ocean. So that's why we ended up kind of splitting those out so that, as you said, we don't exhaust the primary fund with follow-ons in the growth stage companies, and luckily, we haven't had any core losses in the portfolio, so everybody's kind of growing up. So that's why we had to raise a larger 100 million fund three so that we can actually be able to feed everybody.
Absolutely, that's amazing. And last main question before we move on to the rapid fire round, and this one is about what you see will be the impact of funds portfolio in the long run, and what all breakthroughs or innovations that are going to come out of it.
Yeah, our mission is to transform healthcare by really implementing all the automation standardization in order to solve the reproducibility crisis of experiments, in order to speed those up, have robotic cloud laboratories that can work 24/7, and really make things more efficient, right? So, in that sense, take a lot of things that have been in automotive and aerospace for a really long time, and that gave aerospace, for example, such a safe track record in flying, um, and apply that to healthcare now, which before was very much always like one-off work with very expensive labor, PhD level types, and then on the other hand, also get rid of the silos in healthcare, so have more interconnectivity through data, um, and um, and also come with breakthrough treatments to market that are much cheaper, ideally, than the traditional $1 to $3 billion that it takes to bring a drug to market.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
I think we're
Yeah.
excited to, as you know, really automating all of these stagnant workflows into one integrated full stack approach. And I think this is the problem with research and development, especially in life sciences and healthcare. It's hyper fragmented. Everybody's doing the same thing twice a lot of times without knowing it, and then everybody's still using lab books with spilled coffee on it. So what I think for us, if we're able to bring drugs from a hit all the way to FDA approval in half the time at half the cost, that's a huge breakthrough for the entire world. Because the problem that we've had is that there's a lot of great drugs that are available, but if it costs $2 to $3 million for the patient to get a CAR T treatment or a cancer treatment, you didn't actually make anything any better, right? And I think that's been the fundamental issue of it's great to have great drugs and breakthrough treatments, but if it's not affordable and democratizable, then we didn't really improve anything. So we're excited to do that. And then also on the deep tech side of being able to democratize access to space, a lot of our companies have been able to let countries that would have never had a chance to put payloads into space, like emerging and developing economies, actually have, for the first time in history, the ability to put things in space because the cost structure was a lot reduced. So I think for us, democratizing access to the technologies is really important, because I think people forget that a lot of times the breakthroughs stay in the US or Europe, and they don't actually trickle down to emerging economies, etc. Where I would like to see a cancer treatment that's actually affordable for people in emerging economies, right? And other elements like that. So that's kind of what we're looking forward to, is if we can accelerate the research and development, we can actually break down the barriers to entry for the product access for people, and then everybody can have a fair chance at getting access to it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very, very excited about what you're building and backing at Harmonix Fund. So kudos to you guys. And now let's do the rapid fire round, wherein I'll ask you 5 quick questions about the investing that you're doing at Harmonix, and you have to give 5 quick answers, right? So who's going to take these? Is Krish going to take these? Is Maximilian, or are we going to have a mix here?
I can take these.
Awesome, awesome. So the first one goes: what are the sectors and regions you invest in?
Yeah, we invest primarily in the US, but also globally. And the sectors are healthcare, life sciences, and critical infrastructure, deep tech. Just to give you an example on each, life sciences is biomanufacturing, AI drug discovery, AI drug development, and even clinical um, patient recruiting for clinical trials. And then in the healthcare, it's automating a lot of the ologies, so pathology, um, dermatopathology, and a lot of other things like digital surgery. And then in the deep tech, critical infrastructure, it tends to be aerospace and defense, satellite telecommunications, and new materials.
Great. And what's the typical stage of investment where you come in?
Seed and Series A in the early stage fund, and then in the growth fund, it'll be a Series B and beyond.
Okay, okay. And what's the typical check size you put in?
500K to 5 million.
Awesome. Where can founders get in touch with you or apply for funding in case there is a direct way?
Yeah, info@harmonixfund.com. You can also apply on our website, and yeah, I mean the best is always if you know someone that's directly connected to us that's willing to make an introduction um, to really rise above. And we're very busy. We try to read all deals and respond to everything, but sometimes it's not possible. So if it comes from a friend, it's really great to we're more likely to take a look and not miss anything.
Absolutely. Last one, where can our listeners follow you?
Yeah, on LinkedIn, so far we don't have a dedicated podcast yet ourselves, but we have been on other podcasts as well. LinkedIn is probably the best one, and then on our website you can sign up for our newsletter. That should be allow you to follow us as well.
Absolutely. I'll make sure to put all those links in the show notes below. Thanks so much for coming on, Maximilian and Krish. It's been a pleasure hosting you and love what you're building at Harmonix. Thank you so much and happy investing.
Thanks so much for having us, Prashant.
Super appreciate it, Prashant.
Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure.